Amazing turnaround. Millionaire exposes Nanny. But discover the touching truth that followed. Greg Thompson stood in the expansive kitchen of his Minneapolis home, the evening golden light spilling across polished granite and gleaming stainless steel. Outside, children laughed and played, the suburban air humming with a sense of tranquility. Yet within him, a storm brewed. The stunning facade of his seemingly perfect life was cracking. The woman who they trusted, Clara, the nanny who devoted herself to his children for years, had been robbing them. It wasn't just money. It was a betrayal that cut through the core of his carefully crafted world. His hands clenched against the cool countertop, a mix of rage and confusion roiling through him. Clara was more than a caregiver. She was a pillar of their family routine. And now, the notion that she took from them, that she exploited their trust, felt like a knife twisting in his gut. His heart raced as he confronted her in this well-lit kitchen where laughter and warmth were usually abundant. He didn't just see a thief. He saw a single mother in distress. "Tell me why you did it, Clara." His voice cracked, laden with disbelief. She trembled, the weight of her sins evident, yet her determination not to break before him resonated. "I lost my job, bills are suffocating me," she whispered, eyes shimmering with desperate tears. Suddenly, he wasn't just Greg Thompson, the millionaire tech mogul. He was Greg, a husband and father caught in a moral quagmire. "But you could have come to me." His words echoed, rattling against the walls of his image. This was the first true moral dilemma he had ever faced. Protect his family or extend compassion to a woman who had faltered under pressure. Before he could ponder further, Clara shared her life story, words tumbling out like rocks from a shattered dam. Each revelation of her struggle forged an unexpected bond filled with guilt and empathy. He was torn. Every ounce of his well-honed instinct screamed to shield his family, yet there lingered an unsettling whisper that perhaps he should try to help. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Greg dug deeper into Clara's past. He learned of her dreams as a nursing student, her aspirations drowned under the weight of financial desperation and a sick child. The woman who stood before him, trembling with shame, had been vibrant, once not a criminal, but a casualty of circumstance. Then came the clincher. Clara had been a student of his late mother, a nurse full of passion and commitment. The connection hit him like a tidal wave. Could it be that this was his mother reaching out from beyond, urging him to see a reflection of the good she championed? Greg's muscles tightened in conflict. Could he condemn her for wanting to survive when he was thriving? The kitchen felt smaller, the air thicker and charged with tangled emotions. Just as he considered reaching out to Clara for forgiveness and a chance at redemption, his phone rang. The sharp sound cut through their intimate moment, resonating ominously. He glanced down, dread pooling in his gut as the name appeared on the screen. The tone of the call promised ramifications. Would this be the moment where his decision between loyalty to his family and compassion for Clara would come crashing down? As his heart raced and thoughts spiraled, he felt a firm grip of uncertainty tightening around him. Greg stared at the phone, the bright screen glaring. It felt like the harbinger of a storm. Each vibration sent ripples of anxiety through him, amplifying the tension steeping in the kitchen. This was not merely a call. It held the potential to amplify or shatter everything he had just begun to comprehend. Was it the bank? Could it be his partners asking about the latest project? The world he had constructed, crafted meticulously like a fragile tower of cards, felt precarious. Just as fleeting thoughts crossed his mind, Clara's eyes, those pools of desperation mixed with fierce resolve, drew his attention back to the present. He forced himself to refocus, realizing that this moment held the power to shift his entire perspective. Maybe it's not as simple as supports or sanctions, he thought, grappling with the dual paths laid before him. A pristine reputation and the human cost of his choices. The silence stretched as he contemplated his next step. The call was evolving into a defining moment. He was being called to not only choose for himself, but also to redefine what it meant to truly lead. Gripping the phone more tightly, he felt a tangible change within himself. A shift, a deepening awareness of the protector's role he had often relegated solely to finances and security. Perhaps nurturing extended beyond wealth. He sensed the burgeoning responsibilities of compassion and understanding weighing steadily on his shoulders. But this was his family, his legacy, and Clara was not a criminal in this moment. She was a woman fighting for her life. As the phone continued to buzz in his trembling hand, he ultimately silenced it, drawing his focus back to Clara. "I want to help you, but I need to know if you're willing to make changes," he pressed gently, his tone mixing authority with a softness he barely recognized in himself. "I want tea steal again," she stated, determination glinting in her eyes. "I just didn't know where to turn." It was a catalyst, the anchor he needed to steer a new course, that he took a deep breath, feeling a flicker of hope. This situation could be a turning point in both their lives. He could utilize the position he had created not just financially, but as a mentor, a guide. But would that compromise the very stability he had fought for? Suddenly, clarity washed over him. As a successful leader in his field, he possessed vast resources and knowledge that could directly impact Clara's life. He could lend her not just money, but a hand up, an opportunity. This revelation illuminated a striking possibility. He had the power to transform another's life, and, in doing so, perhaps transform his own. "Tell me what you need," he said, grounding himself in newfound resolve. "Let us discuss how you can get back on your feet." He didn't realize it, but this simple directive shifted the narrative for both of them. A path toward redemption, not just for Clara, but also for himself, a chance to reforge his own identity in the process. As the conversation deepened, unraveling plans and possibilities, a definitive choice blossomed within him. He would utilize his influence and standing not merely to defend his family, but to uplift someone who, like his mother, embodied resilience. Just when plans started to take shape and the burden of fear began to dissolve, another notification pierced the air, the chilling buzz of his phone once more beckoning. This time, it wasn't just a name. It was an encrypted message from an unknown number that carried more weight than merely curiosity. It read, "We need to talk. Now." An ice-cold shiver brushed against Greg's spine. What revelation awaited him behind that unknown message? Greg's heartbeat quickened, a visceral response to the unknown threat that flickered on his phone screen. The message felt like an echo of danger, a reminder that while he planned to help Clara, his own life was still steeped in uncertainties. The fading weight of his prior fears ebbed away, replaced by an unnerving curiosity and foreboding. Who could this be? He wondered, a sense of dread creeping into his thoughts. It danced alongside his resolve for empathy as his mind wrestled with the newfound responsibility he felt toward Clara. She deserved support, and yet he couldn't ignore the gravity of the situation he faced. He was stepping into a different arena, one where compassion had to coexist with caution. "Greg?" Clara's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts, pulling him back from the edge of his anxiety. "What is it? What's wrong?" He hesitated, grappling with the urge to confide in her about the alarming message. But opening that door might lead to increased tension, one more worry she couldn't bear. "It's just work," he lied, his words tasting bitter on the tip of his tongue. "Let's keep the focus on you." He felt the flicker of dishonesty, a development that unsettled him. The conversation continued, but his mind drifted between the immediate concerns of Clara's future and the ominous prompt awaiting him. He had shifted from protector to mentor so quickly, and the nuances of both roles weighed heavily. Helping Clara required not just resourcefulness, but a deep understanding of herself and the mistakes she had made. An internal strife sparked within him, an illumination that he could no longer ignore. If I'm truly to lead, I need truth, not only for myself but for Clara. He mused, the thought taking root in his mind. They're about to give me a chance to redefine my legacy. He realized, carving out actionable thoughts from his earlier paralysis. And as a leader, I can't shy away from addressing uncomfortable realities. Determined, he turned back to Clara. How can I trust that this time will be different? What steps can you take that would seal this new direction? He designed his questions to prompt deeper reflection. He was shifting from being merely an arbiter of safety to a proactive architect of change. Clara met his gaze, steeling herself against his directness. I will show you, she stated resolutely. Give me the opportunity to prove it. Greg nodded, feeling a mix of admiration and fear. There was strength in her vulnerability, but that same bravery could also lead to further pain. He reached into his own well of uncertainty. Could he rebuild her life while contemplating the implications of whatever awaited him in that message? The balance seemed insurmountable, yet the need to create space for honesty anchored his resolve. As Clara began outlining her idea for a fresh start, Greg's mind drifted again. The anonymous message loomed overhead, a cloud over the sunshine he desperately tried to cultivate in their conversation. Is this the moment I discover something crucial? Can understanding this message guide me further? He pondered, the question a compass directing him toward both potential danger and clarity. Glimmers of light began illuminating through the treachery. Perhaps confronting the unknown could also empower both him and Clara. He could lead by embracing the truths hidden in shadows. Just as he prepared to respond with a newfound sense of authority, another notification rang louder than the last, an incoming call from an unrecognized number. The tension surged. Greg knew, in this new chapter of his life, a fresh challenge waited at the other end, mingling peril with promise. He hesitated only briefly before answering. The past may have been fraught, but it was time to delve headfirst into whatever the future was preparing for him. "Hello," he said, his voice steady, ready for whatever revelation awaited him. The voice on the other end was low and deliberately measured. "Greg, this is Emily from Adam Security. I hope I'm not interrupting." There was a loop of formality to her tone that made him alert. "No, not at all," he replied, a flicker of unease rippling through him. He had his suspicions about who she was calling about, and he couldn't shake the connection between the ominous message and the presence of security. "I have some updates regarding your concerns about Clara," she continued, her professionalism wrapping around the words like a cloak of seriousness. We've been monitoring the situation closely. There are some angles I believe you'd find interesting." As she laid out her findings, he listened intently, parsing through the layers of information. Each revelation felt like a needle inserting doubt into his earlier convictions. Clara's past was murkier than he had anticipated, the shadows of her history tugging at the threads of his intentions. "Is she safe?" Greg asked, his voice strained against the growing unease his conscience began producing. "Uncertain," Emily replied, the gravity of her words ricocheting in his mind. "Previous connections could pose a risk, but we might have a way to secure her environment if you'd like to proceed." With a steely sense of purpose, he nodded along even though no one could see him. "Yes, whatever it takes." The decision crystallized in his mind, not without a current of fear running beneath it. He needed to take action not just as a mentor, but as someone invested in the well-being of another. Pushing through the entanglements of regret and doubt, he would fight for her chance at redemption. "Understood," Emily replied. "I'll initiate a protocol, but I need you to understand the implications of this. You'll be taking a central role. Are you prepared for that responsibility?" "More than ever," he asserted, feeling a new layer of purpose rise within him. He was no longer merely responding to Clara's needs. He was stepping forward as a guardian of her future, perhaps even his own. After ending the call, an unsettling tension layered over his thoughts. He looked at Clara, who was still immersed in her plans. "I just had a conversation that will alter our course," he said, wary but decisive. "We need to move quickly." Clara looked up, concern flashing in her eyes. "What do you mean? Is it bad news?" Greg weighed his options, glancing at the phone again, the specter of her past looming larger now. He could share the urgency without unraveling everything she was trying to build. There are risks we weren't aware of about your former life. We need to prepare. What kind of risks? She asked, a note of defiance creeping in, fully prepared to challenge the implications of his words. It seems your past might be closer than we thought. The words hung heavy in the air, bringing a brutal realignment of the landscape they were navigating together. It was the truth, and now, more than ever, he felt the burden of honesty weighing on them both. We need a plan. Clara looked back at him, her resolve settling in. Then let us make one. I refuse to stay trapped in a narrative of my past. If we're going to do this, let us do it right. As they began brainstorming strategies, each idea jotted down was both liberating and constraining. It triggered an evolution within him, a shift from mentor to strategist, from protector to co-founder of this new life they envisioned. But still lingering was the knowledge that whatever surfaced from Clara's reality could unsettle the equilibrium they were trying to establish. The looming threat felt relentless, an anxious drumbeat in the background of their collaboration. Greg paused mid-sentence, the fears inside him flaring anew, an inner voice whispering. What if the shadows of her past come calling again? Just as he directed the conversation toward constructing protective measures, Clara stopped him with a hand raised. Wait, there is something you should know, Greg. I've been holding on to a piece of my story I haven't shared. Her words struck like lightning, reinforcing the dread of what lay ahead. The truth she would unveil might be the key or the very thing that brought down everything they began to rebuild. Go on, he urged, dread clashing with a fierce commitment to confront whatever awaited them. Clara inhaled deeply, the tension palpable between them. Before I came to work for you, I was involved in a charity organization. She began, her voice trembling slightly. But it quickly became something more dangerous. We were doing great work feeding the homeless, providing shelter, but then I got too close to something. Greg's heart raced as the enormity of her words settled over him. He felt drawn in, like a moth to a flame, despite the growing anxiety in his gut. What do you mean? He pressed, his voice low and steady, fought through the chaos in his mind. There were people using the charity as a front for something illegal, she admitted, her eyes lowering to the floor. I thought it was just another day in the office, but it turned out there was a trafficking operation disguised behind our good deeds. I found out and I tried to expose them. His pulse quickened. The stakes were rising far beyond what he'd imagined. And they found out about you. She nodded, the pained expression on her face setting his heart on fire. I had to leave before it was too late. I changed my name, moved here. I thought I'd escaped. Her voice cracked, and he felt the weight of her trauma, solidifying his resolve to protect her. Their brainstorming session gave way to a deeper discussion of Clara's past, the blueprints of a new strategy morphing into a much more complex tapestry of survival. The protective measures Emily had spoken of weren't just precautionary. They became their lifeline. Do you think they'll come after you? He asked, catching the vulnerability in her eyes. If they know where you are? I don't know. I hope not. The uncertainty loomed like a dark shadow at the edge of their conversation. But if I've learned anything, it's that the past rarely lets you go so easily. The room electrified with tension, the reality of their predicament sinking in. Clara was not just a victim of circumstance. She was a brave woman who had fought against an insidious system. This revelation reframed their battle and thrust him into a more profound role than just a mentor. He was now a full-fledged ally, a guardian in a fight that would be exhausting and fraught with peril. Greg felt his focus sharpening as urgency coursed through his veins. We need to create a plan that not only protects you, but also gives you a new life, one where they can't reach you again, he stated, determination anchoring his thoughts. Agreed. But where do we begin? She challenged, her spark igniting a familiar flame of purpose within him. Let us rebuild your identity actively. Change the narrative, Greg suggested, an idea taking root within the chaos. They were discovering hidden truths about each other, sparking a connection that defied the havoc surrounding them. We'll do this together. I can help you connect with resources, find a safe place, maybe even some legal advice. Clara's eyes lit up as Greg began mapping out a path forward. The flickers of hope pulsed through his ideas, providing a counterbalance to the looming uncertainties. I know this feels overwhelming, but you are stronger than you think, he said, recognizing the warrior within her. But what about you? Clara asked, the vulnerability of her gaze cutting through him. What will happen to you if they find out we're looking into this? You could be targeted. He paused, torn between his commitment to her and the risk brewing under the surface. It doesn't matter. I won't let your past put you in danger. Your safety is what matters most, he asserted, his devotion leaking into every syllable. Yet, deep down, his heart echoed with self-questioning. Was he truly prepared to fully own this responsibility? The weight of her history threatened to crush his resolve, and he felt the stakes of the commitments he was making crystallizing in the air as if wrapped in a tight embrace. The doubt festered, but so did the clarity. He was on a mission for more than just Clara's redemption. It was about his own metamorphosis, too. Greg inhaled sharply, aware that clarity and chaos often walk hand in hand. We need to move fast. Time is of the essence. But I know we can do this, he declared. Even as the thought of confrontation loomed ominously ahead, he watched Clara's face transform from fear to determination, the flicker of a new spirit sparking in her eyes, empowering both of them. The truth of their situation woven together, their shared vulnerability, laid a foundation under their calculated plans as they prepared to face the unpredictability of Clara's past head-on. Greg felt an unsettling sensation tightening in his chest. Two paths lay ahead, one marked by confrontation and danger, the other enchanted by uncharted possibility. What if we meet with Emily? She must have more information that could guide us, Clara proposed, her voice steady as if she had transitioned into a determined leader ready to reshape her destiny. Good idea, he agreed, still wading through the torrent of conflicting emotions within. But as he thought about the risky meeting ahead, the echoing doubt returned, murmuring its unsettling promises. Suddenly, the phone rang again. The screen lit up with Emily's name. A quiet intensity surged within him. They were about to step deeper into the shadows, and with every heartbeat, the pieces of the puzzle shifted into position. What awaited them could change everything. Would they be ready for the next step and the revelations that must come? Greg's hand trembled slightly as he answered the call, letting the weight of Clara's revelations and their potential consequences hang in the air. Emily's voice came through, steady and matter-of-fact, a stark contrast to the whirlwind inside him. We need to meet. I have information that could change everything. Where? His voice held an urgency he couldn't disguise. He glanced at Clara, who was now standing straight, her determination sparking a new level of energy between them. Let us meet at the Beacon Coffee Shop on 5th. It's south off the main street. Less chance of being seen, Emily suggested. I'll be there in 30. The line went dead before he had a chance to absorb the weight of her words. What is the plan? Clara asked, her eyes hard with resolve, piercing through the anxiety clawing at Greg's stomach. We trust Emily to have valuable information. We need to approach this with caution. If anything goes wrong, his voice trailed off, stopped short by the gravity of their mission that now intertwined their lives. We can't afford to hesitate, Clara interjected. They want to wait for us to gather our strength. If it's a fight, we jump in prepared. Something stirred inside Greg at her words. She was right. Hesitation only fueled doubt and fear. They needed a plan. Fine. Let us get the essentials down before we leave. If this truly is the beginning of a new life for you, we must approach the reality that your past could very well intrude. Her gaze softened momentarily. You're willing to fight this battle with me? Not just with you, he declared, the dawning realization granting him clarity. For you. For both of us. I'm not ready to turn back. The truth in his statement took him by surprise. He felt the weight of commitment reshaping him, one fracture and bend at a time, carving out a deeper purpose within .as. They gathered a few essentials, cloaks of anonymity in the forms of hats and jackets. Greg's mind raced. The encounter with Emily was no walk in the park. It was a tightrope walk over a chasm of uncertainty. He peered into the mirror and hardly recognized himself. No longer was he just a businessman trying to uplift his career. He was staking everything on this woman's safety, and in some strange way, on his own awakening. "Are you ready, Clara?" he asked, the words like armor swirling around him. "More than ready. I've been living in shadows for too long. It's time to step into the light, even if it's dangerous." He took her hand, a silent pledge forming in that brief contact. "Then we face this together." The drive to the beacon felt deceptively linear, with city blocks blurring past them. Greg's fingers drummed on the steering wheel, adrenaline cycling through him. This run-of-the-mill traffic soon shifted into a battleground. Each red light clung to the skies like an ominous warning, each pedestrian a reminder of the unseen dangers lurking around the corners. Finally, they arrived. The small coffee shop blended into the urban backdrop, a seemingly innocuous space hiding the potential for life-saving revelations. They found a table tucked in the corner, cautiously observing the small crowd while awaiting Emily's arrival. "Was she not truly on our side?" Clara whispered, her optimism battling her fear. "She's our best shot, Clara." The memory of their shared moments buoyed him, thickening their bond. "But if the meeting goes south, I will fight." Her tone was fire. "I'm not letting them take another fragment of my life from me. No more." As they awaited Emily, the door swung open, and in walked their ally, scanning for recognition. Greg's breath hitched. With every second that passed, potential confrontation loomed larger, the stakes rising into the visible fog of their surroundings. How much further are we willing to go? He pondered as the door closed behind Emily, sealing off their escape. This decision would redefine everything moving forward. He sensed a change in the atmosphere. The suspense draped like a heavy curtain above them. No retreat now. As they began to engage, shadows stretched deeper, and paths of truth and danger flirted dangerously close together. Was he truly prepared to face the darkness that awaited, not just for Clara, but to unveil the hidden contours of his own strength? And as Emily approached, the frail boundary of safety stiffened around them. "I have news that will shock you both," she said softly, but Greg couldn't shake the feeling that they were only one revelation away from spiraling into chaos. What was it that Emily had unearthed? Would it set them free or plunge them deeper into peril? The tension thickened at the small table, an almost tactile force, as Emily slipped into the seat opposite Greg and Clara. Her nervousness masked as determined focus. She wasted no time. "I've been digging into the organization's background since he reached out," she started, glancing around to ensure no eavesdropping ears were nearby. "What I found left me unsettled. Their reach is deeper than we suspected, and they have a plan that involves you, Clara." Greg felt the weight of Emily's words pressing down on him. The stakes were higher than he had anticipated, and he could sense Clara's anxiety matching his own. "What kind of plan?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. Emily hesitated, her gaze dropping. "They're hoping to use your past against you, Clara. They've tied up loose ends," and she paused, taking a heavy breath. "You might be the key to breaking down something much larger than us." Clara stiffened, her fingers fisting around the edge of the table. "What do you mean by larger?" "I uncovered ties with influential figures, people who won't think twice about destroying anyone who stands in their way," Emily replied. "In their minds, you're a liability they want to neutralize before it's too late." Greg's heart raced. Taking on this fight was beginning to feel insurmountable, but Clara's presence pulled him back from the brink of despair. He couldn't allow himself to falter. "Then we need a plan," he asserted, his resolve hardening. "We have to expose them before they can act." Clara met his gaze, finding strength in his determination. "I'll do whatever it takes to clear my name, to cut the strings they've kept tied around my life. But if I go public, it will draw unwanted attention." Emily nodded. "Exactly. And we need to tread carefully. If they sense we're coming for them, they might lash out. Greg could feel the urgency of the moment. This wasn't just about Clara anymore. It was a fight for his own identity, a reclaiming of his purpose that had been dormant under layers of routine and perceived safety. He was done being a bystander. What do we need to do? We must gather evidence, Emily advised. Reach out to those who've been overlooked victims who might still be out there, willing to speak up. And we need to be discreet. Clara's expression shifted from fear to fierce determination. I'll make some contacts. We should trust anyone blindly anymore. Before Greg could voice a suggestion, the bell above the cafe door jingled, drawing their attention. A figure slipped inside, scanning the room with narrow, assessing eyes. Greg's stomach sank. The man's demeanor exuded a dangerous confidence, one he recognized from his past encounters. What do you want? He thought bitterly. I should have known they'd put their eyes on us, Clara murmured, her hand squeezing his. The man's presence ignited a primal fight-or-flight response in Greg. This was it. The boundaries between their past and present were fracturing. He needed to focus, to stay on course amidst the chaos. Stay calm, he whispered, locking eyes with Clara. We don't know why he's here yet. Emily remained vigilant, observations flashing across her face. But as they monitored the new threat, Greg felt an unfamiliar surge of clarity. If they were going to fight, he'd need to draw on everything he had learned over the years. This was more than a personal battle. It was an awakening of his own character. Whatever happens next, we face it together, he said, his voice low but ringing with a newfound conviction. I want to let fear rule us. They prepared to confront the rising danger, the room swirling with tension as the man approached. As soon as he was close enough to hear, he leaned in, a smirk etched across his face. You three are a bold bunch, he said, the edges of his words full of menace. Greg felt a knot tighten inside him. The weight of the moment bore down. How much was he willing to lose? But now there was no turning back. The confrontation had only just begun. What was hidden beneath his resolve might be the very thing that set this fight apart from all the others. And in that heartbeat of hesitation, with the threat looming larger than life, Greg questioned his own limits. How far was he willing to go to protect Clara? And in doing so, would he discover depths to himself that he never knew existed? Greg felt an electric charge in the air as the man moved in closer. His presence was suffocating, a thin veneer of casual swagger masking how dangerous he truly was. But in that moment, as Greg glanced at Clara and Emily, he also felt something new stirring within him, a sense of purpose that eclipsed his trepidation. He had been afraid for too long, and it was time to shift the balance. Bold, Greg echoed the man's comment, forcing confidence into his voice despite his racing heart. Or maybe just prepared. The man chuckled lightly, amusement dancing in his eyes. Prepared like lambs to the slaughter. His words dripped with disdain, but Greg decided to lean into the challenge. Perhaps fear would dissipate with confrontation. Lambs, huh? Greg replied, narrowing his gaze. Is that why you're here? To pick us off like easy prey? With a predatory smile, the man took a step closer. I came to remind you all of your place. The threat coiled around his words, sending a chill through Greg's spine. He clenched his fists, the knuckles whitening with determination. Let's see where that place really is, Clara interjected, her voice steady. The fire in her eyes ignited a spark of defiance in Greg. If Clara could stand firm, then so could he. The man's expression shifted slightly, surprise mingling with annoyance. You think you can fight this? He asked, glancing between them as if weighing their resolve against the potential consequences of their actions. Not just fight, Emily cut in, her tone leveling with calm authority. We'll expose you and everything you and your associates have done. The tension at the table thickened, an invisible boundary drawn around their collective resolve. Greg could feel the urgency to escalate the confrontation, but the words weren't forming quite as they should. He needed to strategize, yet the primal instinct to respond to aggression loomed heavier than strategy. The man leaned back slightly, assessing them as if they were pieces on a chessboard. You're naive to believe you can take this on. There are forces at play far beyond your comprehension. Yes, forces you underestimate, Greg said, stealing his voice. He felt the weight of the mounting pressure mold him into a version of himself that he had only hinted at when speaking with Clara about their dreams. It was not just about survival anymore. It was about authenticity. Closing his eyes for a split second, Greg steadied his breathing, opening the extra channels of his mind that had lain dormant in years of mediocrity. Here was a moment to seize a chance to reveal his capacity for resilience, to step into the light of his own ability. "Let us make a deal," the man suggested, an eyebrow arched in a mixture of amusement and challenge. "This is a fight you don't want to finish, I assure you." It struck Greg, then the fight wasn't merely a battle of wills versus threats. It was a duel of knowledge and power. It's not about wanting to finish the fight, he managed evenly. It's about being strong enough to face what comes next. In an instant, it hit him. Confronting the man wasn't enough. They needed to gather all the intelligence and leverage possible for an upper hand. "There are others out there, aren't there?" he asked, urgency creeping back in. "Others who have been silenced." The man paused, a flicker of uncertainty shimmering through his confidence. "What if there are?" he replied cautiously. Greg sensed an opening. "We need to track them. The exposed ties, the victims, these are our arrows against you. Clara and I are just the beginning." The challenge had been issued, and Greg realized the fight was no longer solely about saving Clara. It was about reclaiming control over their lives and futures. The tiny, timid voices in his mind began to fade, overtaken by a harmonized symphony of purpose. The man's eyes narrowed, a storm gathering behind his gaze. "You think you're clever? You think you could just take on this entity?" "I'm not just thinking," Greg declared. "I'm choosing." And as the confrontation simmered and threatened to explode, Greg felt a certainty he had never felt before. Would the fight draw out his capabilities, or would he falter under strain? The answer loomed ahead, the stakes reaching astronomical heights. But just then, the sharp ping of a mobile screen broke the tension. Emily's face paled as she read a message. "We're not alone. They know what we're up to." Greg swallowed hard, fear knocking insistently at the door of his newfound resolve. The rules of the game were changing, and the true danger was now revealed. Would they seize the moment, or would uncertainty drag them back into the shadows once more? Greg's heart raced as he witnessed the color drain from Emily's face. The weight of their situation pressed heavily upon him, an almost palpable force that threatened to suffocate any remnants of his newfound resolve. Yet, a flicker of determination rekindled within him. This was not merely a moment to react. It was a call to action. "Who knows?" he asked, narrowing his eyes at Emily, the urgency sharpening his focus. "It's a group message," she whispered, showing her phone to him. The screen illuminated her trembling fingers, and Greg felt the pressure of the unknown loom larger than ever. Control is key, Greg thought, his mind flipping through potential tactics. They were standing on the edge of a precipice. A misstep could plunge them into chaos beyond recovery. "We need to act, not react." "What should we do?" Clara asked, her authoritative tone still intact, but hints of concern poking through. Greg could sense her anxiety, the threads of her confidence slowly unwinding. He needed to reinforce their collective spirit. "First, we need to gather our thoughts and salvage this moment," he responded, pushing away the fear clawing at his mind. "If they know we're onto them, we can't act rashly. Let us consider this a game of intelligence rather than impulse." The man across the table shifted, his amusement now tinged with a keen interest that bordered on curiosity. "You believe you can outsmart us, even when you're under scrutiny?" "Absolutely," Greg replied, keeping his voice steady to mirror his growing conviction. The subtle shift in his demeanor felt like a door cracking open, offering a glimpse of the man he was ready to become. "You've underestimated us, and that's your biggest flaw." As the confrontation crackled with tension, Clara's eyes met Greg's. In this charged moment, He felt a synchronization forming among them, a raw blending of purpose that ignited something deeper than mere survival. This was about empowerment, reclaiming their narrative. We can reach out to the victims, get their stories, Greg proposed, pacing as ideas flowed freely. They've been silenced for too long. Every testimony is a weapon against intimidation. But how do we ensure their safety? Emily's voice trembled, hinting at a deeper concern. The reality of danger melded with their determination. Each story shared must be shielded, Greg stated, internal resolve strengthening his voice. We'll protect them. Find means to keep our investigation discreet. The fire in his words sparked a chain reaction. He felt Clara's belief bolster his own. A digital footprint can be managed, Clara emphasized thoughtfully. If we communicate securely, we can compile the narratives without tipping our hand. Right, Greg said, regrouping the fragments of his thoughts like pieces of a puzzle falling into place. And if we gather enough credible accounts, we can confront that man and leverage public sympathy. Confidence blossomed anew, charged with the hope of shared mission. They were shifting from a reactive posture to a proactive stance, breaking free from the shackles of uncertainty draping over them. Now let us act fast, or we lose this edge, he urged, the anticipation fueling a rush of adrenaline. They had taken the first steps into reclaiming control, and while challenges loomed ahead, the path forward was at least momentarily illuminated. As they began to plan their next moves, Greg's mind pulsed with self-awareness, the budding understanding that the shadows of doubt would always follow, but the light of determination could illuminate a new path, just as they started to shake off the lingering fear enveloping them. Another message pinged. Emily glanced down, her eyes widening further, but this time it was different. It's a location, she stated, urgency crackling like electricity. We need to go there now. Greg's breath caught, adrenaline flooding his senses. This could be the breakthrough they were waiting for, or a trap laced with danger. Yet one thing was clear. It was time to confront the truth, no matter the cost. Would they find allies, or merely unveil even deeper layers of the threat? The next choice could reshape their hope or push them further into peril. And as they steeled themselves, Greg understood the next chapter of their struggle was about to unfold dramatically. As the sun set over Minneapolis, casting an amber glow through the windows of Clara's modest apartment, Greg Thompson stood transformed. The last few weeks had tested his resolve and exposed the deeper layers of his character. No longer merely a millionaire tech mogul, he was now an ally and protector, tethering his fate to Clara's journey of redemption. They had barely slept, working tirelessly to sift through Clara's chaotic past while preparing the groundwork to expose the shadowy organization that had sought to manipulate her. A palpable sense of responsibility hung in the air between them, a shared commitment to redefine their futures against the backdrop of danger. The phone buzzed again, this time with an unrecognized number. It was Emily, providing them with the latest updates on potential allies. "I verified a few contacts," she explained, her voice brimming with urgency. "We have former victims willing to speak out, but we'll need to coordinate discreetly. Let's meet. This is the moment we've been waiting for," Greg replied, his tone steady. Each interaction with Emily brought out the latent strategist within him. He was determined to reshape this fight into a genuine movement rather than merely a defense. They craved something deeper, a purpose rooted in justice. As Clara jotted down strategies, Greg noted her fierceness. She was evolving from just a survivor into a warrior, and he had found his place beside her. No longer consumed by fear or uncertainty, he embraced the responsibility they both bore. With every passing day, he grew into the leader he was meant to become, confident, decisive, ready for the challenge ahead. Later that evening, surrounded by notes and coffee-stained pages, Clara turned to Greg, her expression fierce and focused. "This fight is bigger than just my past. If we expose them, we empower others. They may think they've silenced me, but I refuse to let them extinguish my voice." Greg felt the weight of her words simmer within himself, a stirring wakefulness triggering a powerful pulse of purpose. Exactly. This is about reclaiming a narrative taken away from many. We're not just fighting for you. We're fighting for those still trapped in shadows. Clara nodded, gratitude flashing in her eyes. The connection they forged, built on empathy, had crystallized into a shared ethos, a commitment to illuminate their paths and those of others seeking escape from the oppressive grip of fear. Let us gather those testimonies. Each one counts, Greg said, feeling a refreshing sense of belonging to something monumental. He was no longer simply an observer of other people's victories and tribulations. He was participating, leading, shaping the outcome. Days turned into nights of relentless work, a marathon of calls, meetings, and strategic planning. As they solidified alliances with victims willing to expose the truth, Greg harnessed his skills as a businessman, organizing meetings, mapping communications, and navigating the complex landscape of potential threats. The day of their first press conference arrived. Standing at the podium, Clara's smile was radiant, infused with the strength of those beside her. Victims stood collectively, raising their voices after years of silence, united in purpose. As the cameras flashed and reporters jotted down notes, Greg felt a swell of pride course through him. This was the moment he recognized that helping others was the avenue towards his fulfillment. Together, we find strength, Clara declared, her voice unwavering. We will no longer be victims. Today marks the beginning of our fight against the dark underbelly of society. As she spoke, Greg realized his growth had been profound and transformative. He was no longer just a businessman concerned with profits, but had etched his role as a champion for change deeply into his identity. The fear he once clung to now transformed into action. He had proven his capacity to lead without compromising his values. The ripple effects began immediately. Support flooded in from unexpected corners. Offers of help arrived, and the media buzzed with the story of Clara and the growing coalition. Clara's initiative had sparked a movement, and Greg's journey towards redefined purpose had set him on a trajectory of satisfaction he never fathomed. In their resolve, they had found community, purpose, a shared vision for positive impact, each member reclaiming their own story as they hugged in a moment of victorious sentiment. It struck Greg. Their transformation was not only about survival, it was about living fully and authentically. They had conquered the antagonism that once held them hostage, enabling them to reshape the narrative from destruction to empowerment. Energized by their victories, Greg finally understood the gravity of his choices and the legacy he wanted to leave behind. He glanced at Clara, their bond unbreakable, and knew that their lives had changed irreversibly. Let us keep this momentum going, Clara smiled, her eyes glistening with determination. Fueled even more by hope and purpose, Greg nodded. Absolutely. Together we'll ensure others never feel trapped in their stories again. Through trials, tribulations, and ultimate triumphs, they have found not just resolution, but purpose, an indelible mark of personal achievement. As partners in the fight for transparency and justice, they stood on the cusp of tomorrow, ready to define their legacy. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm seriously. It makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear from you. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.